Have you ever been in a situation that was fear-inducing and stressful, and in response, you were neither stressed nor afraid? Can you imagine facing off against a lion or a bear and not only fail to register fear in your brain, but actually just calmly walk away in the opposite direction of that impending threat? It is quite rare to respond to a traumatic external stimulus in such a casual, relaxed fashion, as most of us would have been paralyzed by fear or simply blacked out from the pressure of having to make such a sudden and unexpected flight or fight decision. Now, while I cannot claim to have been accosted by a lion or a bear, despite living in the hills of Southern California, of which there are many roaming around in the wild, I can attest to having had a significant experience that for me was somewhat similarly traumatic or stressful. I was laid off from my job. Now, I know many of you may be thinking that a job layoff doesn't exactly equate to the same level of stress caused by a lion or a bear attack, but I can assure you that the pandemonium around my company and industry's sudden streak of layoffs struck a familiar chord in the hearts and lives of many, sending folks into a spiral of flurrying, rushed resume building and job application filing, oftentimes just mere moments after being let go from years of loyal employment. For me, here's how it happened. I awoke one morning to an urgent email invitation to attend a company-wide town hall where, to my surprise, we were going to be notified about layoffs happening moments later. They said that some folks would receive emails letting them know that they were cut. Others would receive emails letting them know that they were safe. When I checked my email, I was cut. And my natural next response was I made myself a cup of coffee and breakfast and I ate. That's it. Simple, no pressure, no stress, no dread, just a cup of coffee and a perfectly toasted bagel to jumpstart my morning as though it were any other day. Now, how is that possible, you might ask? Everyone else was frantically drafting goodbye emails or transferring personal documents off of work computers, while I was just casually indulging in a little bit of television and enjoying my breakfast. You must have hated your job. That's why. Some might think, right? But the reality is actually quite the opposite. I loved my job. I loved where I work, and my team and colleagues were some of the best I'd ever had the privilege of working with over the entire course of my career. So what then would have caused such a lack of panic to a sudden change in circumstances? Well, the truth is that my brain simply couldn't register any stress or panic because I was just so overloaded with work. If I had to describe that feeling of job loss, the word relief comes to mind. From working multiple jobs to building side hustles to mentoring and coaching, teaching, public speaking, hosting events, and caring for family and friends and the like, I was simply burnt out. While I had peers who were instantly on job boards looking for their next opportunity, all I could muster up the energy to do was make a cup of coffee. I simply needed rest. And it wasn't until that moment that I recognized how impactful rest truly is, not only for our mental and physical health, but for our ability to maintain peak performance in pursuit of both our professional and personal goals. See, the constant demands of life, from work and family to all sorts of commitments that we make and all sorts of responsibilities we've taken on, has kind of landed all of us on this proverbial rat wheel, trying to maintain pace in order to keep moving forward. It is as though if we were to slow down or even stop and take a break, that we would lose momentum or worse, lose ground. Although, even in science, that's not exactly how things work. For example, Sir Isaac Newton crafted this very concept when working on his 3 laws of motion, with the first law being an object at rest stays at rest, or if in motion, an object in motion remains in motion at a constant velocity until acted on by a net external force. Basically, if you're running a race, you can't exactly expect to slow down or stop and take a break to catch your breath and expect to cross the finish line first, right? At least that's what I thought before my job layoff. See, my job as a marketing executive at a large global technology company was pure motion. I was often running, sometimes literally, from meeting to meeting, drafting presentations and strategy documents, building business cases and writing performance reviews, leading team offsites, and or planning team happy hours that actually at the end of it weren't all that happy after an extensive and exhausting workday. My team was oftentimes so busy and had so much responsibility that we literally developed a burnout workstream to help support each other in preventing, burnout. We wrote articles and shared them with each other with helpful tips and tricks to avoid depleting ourselves. And at the end of it, the irony is that we spent so much time writing and researching these articles that we had added yet another item on our to-do list, leading to more burnout. For me, I was going at a breakneck pace in my career, constantly looking for the next opportunity to make more impact or secure a larger performance bonus. Per Newton's law, my motion continued at a constant velocity until acted on by a net external force, a massive company layoff that I didn't see coming and couldn't prepare for. Now, if not for this unexpected change in job status, I would have certainly continued at that same harrowing pace until exhaustion or stress would have landed me in the hospital, or worse. See, my object, my personhood, simply needed to be at rest for a while and stay at rest until I could recover and get back at it again. And it took a layoff at this pivotal point in my career for me to recognize that what was actually happening to me wasn't slowing down my pace in the race at all. It was actually preparing me for the much needed break that would help me prepare for the race ahead. Now, it doesn't have to take a massive or transformative experience for us to recognize this critical key life concept. Are you ready for it? Great. Rest is the leading ingredient for resilience. See, many think of resiliency in life and work as a cut and dry test of one's ability to work hard and push through and keep going against all odds. And to some degree, that's fair, but it's much more likely a definition for endurance than it is for resiliency. Merriam-Webster defines resilience as simply being one's ability to recover from and or adjust easily to misfortune or change. The definition literally tells us that recovery is a core part of being able to develop resilience and overcome stressful situations. So is rest not an active component of recovery? Without rest, there can really be no resilience. So what then is rest? It is simply defined, yet increasingly difficult for us to achieve given today's time constraints and demands on our physical resources. But simply put, rest is ceasing activity and being still in order to refresh, replenish, and recover. Straightforward, right? Not so much. Studies published in the Journal of Ergonomics and the Harvard Business Review abound with data and evidence of workers and societies around the globe that have transitioned from a work culture into a workaholic culture, suggesting that rest is commonly misunderstood and even harder to come by. See, taking rest is simply not something that most cultures celebrate globally. And it's really no surprise why that's the case. Starting at an early age, we commend that ambitious student for staying up late, burning the midnight oil, trying to finish a project, trying to pursue that ever elusive A+ grade. Or we celebrate the entry-level analyst for staying late in the office, picking up the slack for the rest of the team, silently acknowledging their grit and resilience for going the extra mile. While we do all of this rewarding of overworking by calling it resiliency, we're actually missing a key understanding of how overworking works against us in biology. Homeostasis is a fundamental biological concept which describes an organism's ability to continually restore and sustain itself for the maintenance of its own well-being. Now, when we overload or overwork or overextend ourselves, we're actually doing ourselves more harm than good because we're wasting immense amounts of energy in order to try to get back to homeostasis or balance. And to add insult to injury, our technology has made it so much easier to become workaholics and for our cultures to reward us for constant motion rather than periodic rest. We've somehow deemed taking breaks or finding time to replenish as lazy and unproductive. And the concept of self-care seems only reserved for those with vast financial or time-based resources, access to luxury spas, and enough disposable income to justify expensive purchases like high-end teas or robes to cozy up with whenever we get the rare opportunity to shut down our laptops or put down our cell phones. Let me be clear about something. Rest and self-care are not the same thing. Sure, your body would appreciate self-care, but rest is a requirement for continued performance, lest burnout lead to your untimely mental short-circuiting. You need rest to remain resilient. So how then should you get it? I believe there are 3 key ways to rest in order to become and remain resilient. Are you ready for them? To start, you can sleep. No, really, take a nap. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, only 1 in 3 adults actually gets the appropriate and recommended amount of sleep every night. Now, specifically for Americans were having trouble sleeping long before and ever since the global COVID-19 pandemic. According to a study published a few years ago in the Journal of Sleep Medicine, about 1 in 3 participants had some sort of clinical chronic insomnia symptoms, and nearly 1 in 5 had an insomnia disorder. This data, which is actually rates double what they were pre-pandemic. Now, this data actually suggests that there is, in fact, a global sleep crisis. And therefore, it's not all that surprising why the TikTok girlies are serving up recipes for sleepy girl mocktails in order to help their followings catch some Z's. While there are all sorts of factors that affect one's ability to get a restful night's sleep, the value of sleep as a critical driver of rest is really undeniable. If you cannot rest, you cannot continue. Next, you should take a break, either before or after your nap. It's fine. Now, taking a break doesn't just look like indulging in your favorite candy bar or taking a walk outside so much as it pertains to anything you can do for a short period of time to help lighten your cognitive load. See, after every 90 minutes of intensive focus and work, your brain basically shuts down or slows down to near base level performance. Think of your brain like your computer's hard drive. One moment, it's working like magic or arguably like new. But then you open up a program that requires a lot of RAM to be used. Or you open up another tab next to the 100 tabs you already have open on your web browser, and suddenly your computer starts to slow down and make funny noises, glitch, and overheat. Newsflash, this is basically how your brain works. Too many tabs open or programs running leads to slower performance. So after 90 minutes, give it a rest. Go outside, get some fresh air or some natural sunlight if that's available to you. Or you can consider having lunch with friends and coworkers and not at your desk. Beyond the 90 minutes, you can take a vacation just to get a different change of scenery or a new environment. Whatever you find enjoyable to do within a break from a 90-minute intensive power working session will be a welcome reprieve for your brain in order to replenish before yet another sprint. Lastly, you can focus on what's important. Thriving, not striving. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who unfortunately got laid off in and around the same time that I did, and her words rang out like a megaphone on our call. She said, I think I'm glad I got cut. I don't want to strive anymore. And it was this concept of striving that really resonated with me. I mean, weren't we taught from a shockingly young age to always strive for the best, to achieve the greatest amount possible in our limited time here on this planet? For me, as a lifelong overachiever, it almost seemed foreign to me that I would spend any time in my life or work not striving. However, as I sat with her words, I began to recognize that being in a constant state of achievement orientation is actually the antithesis of rest, which means we can't actually expect to strive and be resilient at the same time. Why not? Well, to be forever striving will lead to inevitably missing out on the experiences and the people around us, simply as they wouldn't be our target focus. See, to strive is to have tunnel vision on a goal. But have you ever thought, what happens outside of the tunnel? The problem with striving and not resting is that it leads to burnout that is more than just mental or physical. It's relational. If we're always striving towards the next goalpost or milestone, we never really stop to take in the forest for the trees, as the saying goes, and live presently in the experiences for what they are. See, we live in societies where we're constantly on our phones, interacting more digitally than we do in real life. It almost seems as though our screens give us more comfort than a hug would from a family member or even a stranger. So instead of spending so much time looking down at our devices, maybe we should consider looking up and looking around and experience life for what is happening around us. Rest gives us the mental fortitude necessary to be present and fully invested in the experience of living. The only thing we should strive for is to be present and accounted for during life's happenings and to relate to the world around us in ways that are both meaningful and impactful. For me, once I had the realization of my layoff actually set in a few weeks later, I too desired to fling myself into a very comforting state of sheer panic. But I never really got the chance to do so. I had too soon started enjoying pressing the snooze button, sleeping in a few minutes later every morning, or enjoying a glass of wine at lunch, going outside to catch some sun on the patio when I didn't have to be on a Zoom call. I took rest before I could even panic about being jobless, and I found myself much more ready to take on the challenge of finding a new job when the time came. When I did return to the working world, I was replenished, I was revived, and I was resilient. I had made it through the mental fog that unemployment easily produces, and I came out victorious. And for all of you, I hope the same. Not a job layoff, but that you might be fortunate enough to have an unexpected net external force throw your constant state of motion just slightly off balance and lead you toward a more sustainable way to live. One that includes rest, breaks, sleep, thriving, and many more memories you can recall fondly in the days to come. Thank you.